Chapter 6, Recession and Recovery, 1990 to 1994. Legg & Associates in the late 1980s was bursting at the seams in their Pasadena Boulevard office. Since they shared so many clients and projects, Bob Legg and Bob Miller began a search for adequate office space to accommodate both firms and have room to grow. The pair finally settled on an empty lot on Douglas Road, north of Taft Street in Pembroke Pines. With the help of a client, ANF Developers, the land was rezoned and plans were prepared by Sam Engel Jr., architect, one of Bob Miller's partners in his old office building. Al Fernandez Sr. of ANF coached the two Bobs on the financing and construction of the new building. ANF has been a client for over 20 years. The new 20,000 square foot building was completed in 1990, and RPL&A moved into the first floor to better handle the field crew's needs, and RHM&A moved into the second floor. About a third of the building was empty and ready for new tenants. The building was named the Miller Legg Center without a thought to a later possible merger of the two firms. Just as business was really prospering, one of the worst recessions in decades hit the U.S. From 1990 through 1992, home building practically ceased as interest rates skyrocketed. Both Miller and Legg struggled to retain their staffs and make payroll each payday. Both firms reduced work hours and cut costs in every way possible to survive. Miller was forced to reduce his staff of 28 persons to 18 and reduce salaries for months until business opportunities returned. Both Bobs recall the stressful work environment and the difficult business decisions required to survive that period. However, once business began to improve, the pendulum swung the other way, and the necessary additional staff was not hired until management was certain that the recovery was not temporary. Now the stress was caused by having too much work. Bob Legg continued to grow his community involvement by serving on the Broward County Charter Review Commission, the Broward Economic Development Board, and the Broward Business Coalition for Education. In 1993, Bob Miller was given the Outstanding Service to the Engineering Profession Award by the Florida Engineering Society. Many new staff were hired in the mid-90s, and the most notable are Dusty Jankowski, David Reyes, and Katie Chartrand, 1992, Brian Birch and Delroy Falloon, 1993, and Dylan Larson, Darren Bedore, and Leslie Hernandez, 1994. In the meantime, environmental regulatory agencies were increasing their efforts to preserve those few remaining wetlands left in undeveloped areas. As the wetlands mitigation requirements increased, David John, who had experience with the Westlake Park wetlands and was a land development project manager at the time, heard about a concept called wetlands mitigation banking. This is the creation or construction of healthy wetlands and viable wildlife habitat in large degraded wetland areas to allow developers to purchase credits in the restored wetlands bank in exchange for building on poorly functioning wetlands in their projects. Although the concept was being discussed nationally, no one had ever done it. David John asked Bob Miller for permission to research mitigation banking to see if the local and national environmental agencies would approve such a project in South Florida. Because business was slow, they were still in a recession, Bob allowed David and Leo Schwartzberg to spend some time investigating this new approach. Over a 2-year period, it became apparent that this concept might be successful, and Miller & Associates land development clients could expedite their projects by buying mitigation credits. David John, Leo Schwartzberg, and Bob Miller, along with several Miller staff and outside business persons, created a company that developed a 400-acre wetlands mitigation bank in western Pembroke Pines. This became the first wetlands mitigation bank in Florida and established Miller and his associates as the premier wetlands consultants in the state. Miller Legg continues to work on mitigation banks around Florida. Fortunately, in mid-1992, interest rates came down and new projects began to trickle in. Then in August of that year, Hurricane Andrew devastated South Miami-Dade County, leaving thousands of families homeless. Unexpectedly, people whose homes were destroyed chose to use their insurance proceeds to buy new homes in western Broward. This Miami-Dade catastrophe directly sped the economic recovery in the neighboring communities to the north. Soon, Miller and Legg's companies returned to their previous levels of activity and profitability. Over the next 10 years, many big developers scooped up large land tracts in western Miramar and Pembroke Pines, and a home-building frenzy ensued. Client service was always a foundation for both firms. On one occasion, Bob Miller was talking on the phone to Ronnie Corbett, a longtime client who was driving between projects. Suddenly, Ronnie exclaimed, "I think I just ran out of gas." And he wasn't near any gas stations. Bob assured him that help would be there soon. He contacted a field inspector who was at a nearby project and arranged for him to bring a container of gas to Ronnie Corbett as soon as possible. Ronnie has never forgotten that incident of special client service and has told many others about his experience. During this period, Iraq invaded Kuwait, leading to the Persian Gulf War. The top movie of the year was Home Alone. The cost of a new home was up to $150,000. U.S. serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer pled guilty by insanity. In 1990, I-595 was completed and opened for traffic from Federal Highway to I-75. In 1992, the World Wide Web was created, to be followed shortly thereafter by the Internet.